Get out of the way. The choppers are rolling, and every day more and more choppers as we're starting the fall harvest. We're going to talk about that in our Allied Cooperative program today. Chris Curran is with us, a dairy nutritionist with Allied Cooperative out of that Hickston mill. And Chris, give us an idea as we're into the middle of September now. I would imagine every day more and more of these choppers are firing up. How much work have we done so far?
Well, Bob, there's been a fair amount of silage harvested, and as you know, in our geography, there's a lot of variability on the soils, and the lighter ground's going pretty good, and I think that some of this heavy ground definitely needed, or late planted, needed this extra time that we're getting. So it's really going to be a blessing for these farmers to get these extra heat units at the end of the season. It's going to happen pretty fast for the most part, and I would say within a week and a half, some of this corn's going to be, too dry, definitely.
Talk about that a little bit, Chris, as far as, the things that we need to do as far as how we put it up, bags, bunkers mostly nowadays, but as far as the moisture, cutting height, the other settings that we should be paying real close attention to.
Harvest moisture, for bunkers, we typically look at 65 to 70% moisture works very well. It ferments well, and it really makes a really palatable feed for the cows. They love it at that moisture, especially, for summertime feeding. Bunkers, at that level of moisture, bags, pretty similar. Upright silos, of course, we got to dry those down closer to 60% moisture so they don't juice. Walking your fields, watching maturity is pretty key here. You don't want to miss the boat. And if it's going to take you 1 week or 2 weeks to harvest, obviously you got to be ahead of the curves. And what we look at is on the cob, I usually start there, and when that milk line comes down a third to halfway down, then you're getting close. And I maybe start checking moistures, doing burn downs for moisture at maybe 1/3 of the way down on the milk line. But when it gets to be half to 2/3, it's usually go time. And then as we look at the plant, there's some firing that might take place from the bottom of the stalk coming up. You take that into consideration also. Corn looks different in every field, so you got to just take the larger view of the field to establish where your moisture really is.
What about cutting height, Chris, as far as what we want to get for maximum benefit, maximum nutrition, the cutting height here, and these variety selection? We've got silage-specific hybrids. What kind of a difference are they making as you're seeing being a dairy nutritionist in these rations?
We got our conventional corns, a dual purpose, and then what I really urge, my dairy clients, we want to at least have a silage-specific silage corn or a BMR. The BMR gene has brought us a long way in digestibilities. I've seen it work great in the diets. So that's what we really aim for. And then working with your agronomist, and if you need to consult with that nutritionist and get a little information on what's a good hybrid for dairy cattle, that's what you need to do. And then also just choosing the traits that are going to work into your system, digestibility, starch quantity, and starch digestibility on different hybrids is also a factor. And our goal is always to balance quantity and quality of the forage produced. Corn silage is just a very valuable crop to us to feed, most any cattle, but for dairy, it's just a great feed. The value of it is higher than any other feed stuff you can buy for its comprehensive value. So we really want to maximize the best harvest we can get, process that starch as good as we can, and then let that ferment and soften up, and this stuff's going to feed great.
And that means the big job is not just out in the fields. It's where we store it and how we store it.
Yeah, and the big thing on the bunkers is really a couple things. As packing that silage well is very critical. And so the rule of thumb is called the 800 rule, and you need 800 pounds of packing tractor weight for every ton of silage that comes in per hour. So for easy math, you gotta pretty good sized chopper, you can do 100 tons an hour, and that means you need to have 80,000 pounds of packing tractor weight, whether it's 2 tractors or one big tractor. But that's how the math works on this, Bob. And we've checked densities. I have myself for many years with the assistance of our inoculant reps at Chris Hansen, and we've really seen improvements on densities. Farmers are really doing a good job getting that stuff packed. They're throwing on extra weight, extra tractor, and those numbers are really, they're going better every year, I would say. So that's important. And of course, as choppers get bigger, takes more packing. One thing I'd like to mention, Bob, too, the length of cut and the processing on those choppers. Just want to make a point here that we really have one shot at getting this right for a year's worth of feed. As if you're a dairy producer, you lean on your nutritionist to get out there and check that length, check the processing when you're chopping. That's what we do as nutritionists. We enjoy doing that, but if we can get things right at that stage, it's going to avoid maybe some issues down the road. Maybe we'll have a little bit of fat test if we can get things processed the way we want them, and then the starch digestibility is going to be maximized too. So we want a target of about a 70% kernel processing score, and that it actually will gain some points going through fermentation and when you face off the bunker as well.
And the cows will tell you if you've done it right when you start feeding it. Thanks very much, Chris. Chris Curran, who is a dairy nutritionist at the Hickston Mill for Allied Cooperative. I'm Bob Bosold. Allied